This is called Inglesero. Inglesero. I saunter into the language as a domesticated plant sits in shade and decodes the sun. Brother, there isn't much difference. Within me still is the same embedded faculty of light and shadow. The only variables between us are estimations of moisture, altitude, how acrid the soil there is. Dare I say this tongue is inherited, not borrowed, not imposed. In the same way, some farmers know only the sugarcane fields of their birth, live entire lives inside the expanse of the proprietor's birthright, have dreams sprawling no further than a provision of burlap and barbed wire. Despite this, one knows where the clay is richest, almost blood red, babbling mouth of the twice diverted river, where there was once a forest of hardwoods that his father's father was forced to fashion into effigy, where in the kudzu and tangle of water hyacinth he and his brothers were conceived, the narrow gate where he will skim death's even teeth at the picket line. Yet surely grace and mercy must follow him in all the days of his forefathers' contract, and he will dwell ample in the furrows and fields of the word, will till and woo sweetness out of a land he will never own indeed. So, good afternoon. My name's Mishka Ligot. I'm from Quezon City. I'm a poet. I have delusions of being a poet, and the delusions are strongest at night. And in the day, I'm a graduate student at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, which is around 3 hours northwest from Chicago. I came here to the US to pursue a master's of poetry in 2019. In 2017, which I completed in 2019. And I'm currently pursuing another degree in library and information science. I currently live here in the American Midwest, where it's a few minutes shy of midnight, and the temperature has dropped down to negative 15 degrees. But I'm glad we can come together virtually, safely across oceans despite the pandemic. So thank you so much for having me. I love poems because I love stories. I was a voracious reader as a child, but my attention span is incredibly short. No, but seriously, I love poems because I love language. All the strange and wondrous things you can do with it, how one can use language to make sense of a world that's 100 voices singing and speaking and shouting and weeping all at once. Open your window and you'll hear arguing and courtship, commerce and gossip, preaching and joking, pop songs and protests. Actually, we're immensely blessed to come from such a multilingual country too. If you hop on a bus for 3 hours, in Metro Manila, the chatter around you will blend from Tagalog to Kapampangan to Sambal to Pangasinense. And sometimes you don't even have to leave home to feel it. I grew up in households where Bulanon, Bicol Central, Ilocano, Kapampangan breezed in and out of the rooms, cast across the loom of English and Filipino. Poetry helps me understand this noise, all of this. I came to the field of creative writing not to escape the world I lived in, but to dig deeper into its complexities. I was actually never a big fan of sci-fi and fantasy. Somehow, the great unknown to me was the lives of the people who took the jeep with me to school, riding and getting off Tandang Sora, Feria, Central, Philcoa. The mysterious world didn't only exist in Hollywood movies or in the American shows I caught on Nickelodeon in the houses of friends who had cable. There were stories in those houses too. Why someone's father was abroad. Why someone's mother was in a spat with her siblings over land titles. Why someone's sister was so quiet and always seemingly ashamed. And when the immediate world around me wasn't enough, I looked even closer. I looked inside myself. I wanted to know, for example, why despite having lived in America or the UK, I spoke best in English, but when hurt, I would scream, aray, or nako. I wanted to know why I couldn't comprehend the lives our kasambahay left back in Siquijor or Mindoro. I wanted to know why I listened to bands like Fall Out Boy or Paramore and felt the angst of what they were singing, but couldn't tell you anything about 90s OPM standards, other than that they were what I sang best on karaoke. I wanted to know why Jesus, in my mind, was a man with blonde hair and blue-green eyes, and why he spoke like a cowboy. I wanted to know why I felt shock, horror, pity, or pleasure when I did, and why those feelings never came when they didn't. I wanted to know why I couldn't bear to look at, say, the informal settlers building houses under the bridges our cars drove over, And I wanted to know why I didn't question why they had to do this. The thing about poetry is that it doesn't have the answers to all these. It doesn't. But it does force us to articulate these questions and to wrestle with them. Poetry makes us bend language around these unknowns until, like compasses or sundials, they gesture toward solutions off the page or off the screen. I'm glad I can share some of my work with you today. I'm not going to give a typical TED talk. Instead, I'm going to read a couple poems, some new stuff, some old stuff, some published stuff. With all due respect to spoken word artists and performance poets, that practice actually isn't my field. So I don't really perform my poems. I just I read them as they appear on the page. But I hope that you'll still be able to connect and engage with these inquiries that I'm making towards the world and towards myself. Hopefully, these will also prompt questions you'll have to make in the pursuit of critiquing and bettering the spaces we live in. So I'm going to read a handful of stuff. So when I was little, I'm sure all of you folks know SNR, the big department, the big store. And I remember when we didn't have that. And I remember when it was built. I grew up in Pasig, and I think one of the first SNRs was built in Pasig. American Wholesale. They built it in the field on the corner before the turn that led to a rowdy subdivision. The humming exterior, shabby, like an ancient marble slab unearthed, or an alien ship that descended from the dirty, mustard-colored heavens. And what exotic treasures it contained. Boxes of sugary cereal, big as our televisions had advertised. Whole barrels of ice cream and sherbet in cartoon colors. Galleries of frozen pizzas a la Chicago or New York for the ovens we had yet to buy. Perfectly cylindrical fish sticks, white as teeth and breaded in gold. Shopping carts, glowing orange, and parking lot illumination wide enough for all 4 of your brothers or sisters to sit in. Candy that boasted real fruit juice on the packaging. Driving through our neighborhood, we knew who had just been there. Slides and swing sets cast in brown and green plastic took root in the yards. Rotisserie chicken and greasy calzones dripped and wafted out of windows at dusk. And we knew who hadn't, whose kids rapped on certain metal gates in the afternoons, begging for a turn on the brand new trampoline. That summer, the macopa trees bloomed, heavy with bird feeders for blue jays that never came. 6-year-olds grew tall, chewing gummy bear vitamins instead of brown bottled syrup in cold spoons. Mothers balanced barrels of animal crackers on shoulders as they strutted down streets, crisp paper bags snug with apples, Kool-Aid, and gossip. One Christmas, our plastic tree slept under the stairs, outshined and exiled by the new and very real Douglas fir jammed in the dark corner of our living room. We let its needles wilt and scatter on the floor until March, standing in for the snow we had always wished we had. Before all this, all one had was the duty-free at the airport, a long hour's drive away. It was that or an aunt or uncle working night shifts at the Tacoma hospital whose bi-monthly boxes cradled sacks of pistachios, bottles of conditioner as long and large as our forearms, sometimes parts of them, too, starched, scrubbed uniforms, rolls of socks, squeaky nurses' shoes, white and glossy like the laminated discount signs, hanging, swinging in the industrial air conditioning like halos over the shelves of each wide and smiling aisle. So I live in the US, not as an immigrant, but as a student, and it makes me think a lot about the people who are here for very different reasons. And so this poem is called Aliens of Extraordinary Ability. And it's for my friends Alicia, Aria, and Najibullah, who are also international students. Aliens of Extraordinary Ability. What doesn't survive the mockery of January will fashion you into false prophets. Pretend to understand what blankets the grass, call your families back home, subtract 30 and divide by 2. Prattle all the scripture you left boxed up in your past lives because your suitcases were too small. Carry only the essentials, tortoise shell hairbrush, salted fish in bottles, bachelor's degree, prayer beads worn around the neck as fashion statement. Write about the bushfires, the riots, wire money to your sisters. In the middle of the city, citizens unveil a plaque to commemorate how this land was once sacred. Meanwhile, the border remains a dotted line upon which you hang the overcoats of your cursive signatures. Your vowels soften like butter, flatten a slowly sinking prairie. Proofread every statement of purpose for each eager friend who wants to come join you in this country. Like you, they plan to head back home again, but only after the smoke clears. Until then, flirt with hyphenated Americans at the university pubs. Throw around green card marriage and other joke dreams of ambiguously brown futures, both here and abroad, and struggle with the shifting definition of the latter. Spend the last few cents of your stipends on Riesling, idling in the city parks you envy, so sprawling, so public. Wait for the next god who will spit manna on your full, bright faces. So I'm not from there, but I'm sure you all know about a neighborhood in Metro Manila called Forbes Park. And in Forbes Park, there are squirrels. And squirrels are not endemic to the country, which really makes you wonder why this subdivision has squirrels. And I'm really interested in that, in this idea na parang mas social pa yung mga taga nila kaysa sa taga namin sa Quezon City. And so I think a lot about that. This poem's called Samsara, or Self-Portrait as Forbes Park Squirrel. Because I've grown fat on a diet of English digestives, I've developed a taste for little else, refusing the abundance of my immediate world. The manicured mangoes in one ambassador's garden taste like dust. Dwarf limes in the shipping magnate's backyard contort my mouth into a vice. By the jungle gym of the international school, a grafted peach tree bears the only fruit that slakes my thirst. I want Chicago popcorn and Lucky Charms to eat at the hands of Ben and Jerry. I chew the cables that bridge mansion to mansion and think of them as licorice. How do I explain my universe to you? I have fifth cousins in Berkeley, ancestors dancing for scraps in New Haven. My next of kin sweat in the summer heat, sing hymns still too stiff to be Creole. Hell is a private tennis court in the rainy season. Paradise is a community never in want of an exterminator. Nearby must be a real world, its kingdom of living things that know to hunt and brawl and speak in more than one tongue. In this ceramic menagerie of lush lawns and golf courses, mine is the only tercet pulse. On the clearest nights, you can hear the lowing of a pygmy elephant pacing about the governor's lawn, their own tethered moon. Siberian huskies nap in air-conditioned cages, Siamese and sphinxes preen in prams, stroll with domestic help, dreaming of Dubai. I spook the novice maids in their starched uniforms just to feel a leap of living. I don't blame them. How does one wrap a head or gloved hands around such designer vermin? If I could peel the skin off and live as any ordinary rat, I would. Every night I pray to the trickster god of city planning, run me over with a senator's second Bugatti, reincarnate me, a cockroach. Finally immortal and home and able to comprehend the ethos and underbelly of this beautiful city. Grant me a cup and portion in this reverse diaspora. Knock the electric fences down and let all this knowable heaven come leaking out. I read one last, and so I can let you all go. I feel like I'm teaching a class, which is something I do. I teach also here. I'm a student, but I also teach, and it's very tricky to get people to like poetry, but I'm trying my best. And yeah, poetry is truly something. So I think I'll close with this one. And it, like I said, I'm here in the US as an international student. I'm here as I'm here to work and to study, and I think that's a very specific type of person. I don't know if any of you, I'm sure some of you have done visa interviews, probably as tourists, but let me tell you, a visa interview is probably the most stressful thing you can ever do, especially when you're not going there as a tourist. And so I've been thinking a lot about that, about like, again, how work and how labor and what we do and what we're capable of, and like the kind of credentials we carry allows us to be mobile, right? And allows us to go places. And I've also been thinking about things like the visa system, right? Like how different countries say you have to deserve entry, you have to earn entry, you have to work to get a certain title, a certain piece of paper that allows you to cross the border. And so I'll close with this poem. Naisip na ako minsan, pwede pala mag-Filipino dito. I'm so used to teaching students who are American. Pwede pala mag-Filipino dito. I've been thinking about mythical creatures a lot. And I was thinking, what it would be like for mythical creatures to apply for visas. So I'll close with this. Thank you so much for having me. This is Manananggal H2B. The H2B is the Specialized Worker Visa. Manananggal H2B. Here are my letters of recommendation. My employer's number. Here is a photocopy of the hiring agency's permit to operate. The fees I took out loans for. So many loans. I assure you, these hands can fold and wring laundry 5 times faster than those women without wings. Yes, I have 5 children, 5 daughters, 1 son. My husband has been in and out of work. I know so many lullabies. I am a hard worker. I have no plans to move permanently to the States. Don't you see my twisted body rooted in this embassy like a tree split by lightning? I have so much to return to. Just 10 years. I don't want to die a nanny. My second eldest is just about to start college. I only have 1 son. In our backyard, he keeps a black hen, not for food, not for cockfighting. A black hen he loves more than anything. It's the only thing that won't fly away from his small hands. Thank you so much.